Guys, welcome back to Coliseum Forum. I am joined by a very special guest tonight, somebody I'm a big fan of, Mr. Phillip Kennedy Johnson. You may know him from The Last God, or Last God, but we were going to talk about something I was super, super stoked to talk about, the new Alien series from Marvel. But then there was some big news that was dropped on the world actually just yesterday. I think we're all very excited to hear a little bit more about this if we can, but you're going to be following up Brian Michael Bendis on Superman. Is that correct?
It's true.
Philip, welcome to the show. How are you today, sir?
I'm awesome, man. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we're just going to kind of jump right into this because, I mean, it's about to be the year of Phillip Kennedy Johnson. I mean, you've got Aliens coming out shortly, right? And then is it March that you're taking over Superman, right?
Yeah, it all hits in March.
Whew, what a March.
Future State. I know, man. So it's going to be, you see, Future State
Right.
at DC is January, February.
Right.
And I have 2 Superman books coming out for that. And then in March, that's when my first official monthly books come out from Superman and Action Comics, and then also Alien all at the same time.
That's okay. But here's the thing, and I don't know if a lot of people know this about you. You're also active duty military and a musician.
It's true, yeah.
So where do you find time for all of this? Let's start there.
It's easy, man. You just struggle constantly. That's the answer.
Is that this the formula?
Yeah, you just struggle day in. You get up and you work until you fall down. And that's it.
My grandpa used to give me a similar speech when I was younger. So you're in the military. You're in like the band corps, right?
Yeah, I'm in one of the DC military bands in
Okay.
the DC Baltimore area. So yeah, I work at Fort Meade and I play with the United States Army Field Band, play trumpet, and be marching in the inaugural parade here soon. Assuming our band usually leads the inaugural parade, assuming there is one this year because of COVID. We'll see how that all shakes out.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, when I'm not doing that, we tour quite a bit. We tour about a third of the year ordinarily. And right now we're actually streaming all of our concerts. Yeah, that's that gig right now. And when we're not connecting America to its army, I am writing comic books and workshopping comic stories with my son and just doing other things.
So I think a lot of people, and I know for myself at least, I'm kind of curious about this. How do you join a band in the army? Is it one of those things where you're like, okay, I'm going into the army, and then one day somebody's like a drill sergeant's like, you look like you could play the trumpet, and the next thing you know, you're in a band, or like,
Yeah, like the guy, like the Jarhead.
yeah.
No, it's not quite like that. Okay, there are people in the band field who sometimes join, who just enlist in a different gig, and then what we call a reclass and change jobs.
Sure.
And I've known singers to do that, like somebody who got into the army. There's actually someone in our unit who began as a chemical specialist and actually had a love of singing and was doing a lot of singing on her own. And then I think she was part of the Soldier Show at some point, which is a thing that's not around anymore. But she ended up auditioning for our group and joining us. And we had another singer once years ago who was like a dental technician or something in the army, and then he also auditioned as a soldier and got in that way. But most of us audition as civilians.
Okay.
Like I actually have a master's in music, and they when I auditioned for a specific group when there was an opening in the United States Army Field Band in DC. That was a specific job that I wanted. I really admired that band specifically. I really like our particular mission where we tour a lot and connect America to its army, and we're always just on the road and meeting people in the grassroots of America and kind of singing the praises of our fellow soldiers and tell stories of what we're doing overseas and here, like honoring our veterans. And it's a job I like. So it's a job I auditioned for specifically. And whenever the bands in DC or the academies have an opening, you're auditioning for a specific spot, like a chair to fill. But if you just want to be in the military band at large, you can audition for an Army band's recruiter and just try to pass the audition depending on how many slots they have open Army-wide. And then they will place you depending on because there's Army bands all over the world, really,
Right.
like all over the country, but also in other posts overseas. And if you just want to play music for the Army, there's a job for that, just like we have, you know, truck drivers and dentists and doctors and lawyers and engineers and graphic specialists and all kind of photographers. There's a spot for a musician as well, and you can get in that way.
So do you get like obviously you're not, I would assume you know a lot about the military, but obviously we're here to talk about comics, but do you get like a designation, like an actual rank, like, private first class shredder on the guitar over here, or like, do you know what I mean? Like Mr.
Yeah, totally.
Captain Slap the Bass.
If you get into one of the military bands in the Washington D.C. area or academies, those are like what we call special bands that have special designation, and it's like the MOS code for that is 42 Sierra 42S.
Right.
And for that job, you are assigned the rank of staff sergeant within 8 weeks of joining. You're automatically bumped up to E6 because it's a very specialized gig.
Right.
And you've already got the training that you would require outside of the Army, and so you get a bump in rank for that to make it competitive.
That makes sense. Okay. So
it's like if you join the Army as a doctor, you don't join as a private. Like
right.
it's just a different kind of situation because of all the training you've already received.
That makes sense. Absolutely. So, besides, being in a touring band, like for the military, which is absolutely insane. You mentioned that you potentially, if there is an actual inauguration, you'll be in the inauguration, cause your band leads that parade usually. You write awesome comics. And we have some really, really cool comics coming out from you from the big two in March. I mean, I was really excited to talk about Alien. It's one of my favorite movies. In fact, this is a true story. In Aliens, when they wake up from cryo sleep, Bill Paxton has a tattoo on his chest that you can only see for about 2 seconds of the whole movie. I have no idea why they took the art director took the time to actually put this makeup on his chest to give him a tattoo, but they did it. I thought it was so cool. I have the same tattoo. I love Aliens. So
dude, that is metal as hell. That's awesome.
Yeah. So with that being said, I was super pumped about Alien. But I'm also a big Superman fan. And so you were like, yeah, I can do a little bit better. I'm going to do the penultimate, the most iconic superhero that has ever existed. I'm going to drop that the same month. And so here we are. So let's take these one at a time. Since we were going to talk about Alien, let's talk about Alien first. Where I'm assuming, obviously Alien comics have existed in some way, shape, or form over the last few decades, through Dark Horse and some other publishers. I'm assuming where you pick up, it's brand new continuity. Is that correct?
Yeah, because of where our story picks up, it picks up in reference to where the movies are.
Right.
Like it doesn't actually acknowledge the Dark Horse stories because it's, as far as I can tell, it's still kind of in the air. Like what of Dark Horse canon is going to be canon, is going to remain canon.
Right.
So this first arc that I'm doing does not really take those stories into account, because there were so many arcs. They kind of had this modular approach where every story was its own thing, and they don't necessarily rely on each other. Although sometimes you would see, little nods to other ones. Some of them were so wild. After there'd been a lot of them, they got real creative. Like, you've got some where you've got the one with the android xenomorph that speaks English, and it just goes way
jumps
far
the
from
shark.
anything you ever see in the movies. But I am writing the story specifically for fans of the movies who want more of that,
Yeah.
So I'm not getting right into the crazy territory yet. I really don't want to start with robot xenomorphs that fly and,
Right.
I'm trying to keep it more like the films for now. And then we'll see what, it's still kind of a modular approach. Like, I'm not saying the characters you see here are going to be there for the entire series of Alien at Marvel.
Sure.
But I wanted to start grounded in those first two films specifically, honestly, because I don't know. I love that third movie. Not everyone does. I think there are a lot of things about it I really like.
There are some good ideas.
Yeah, totally. The coolest aspect of it for me is seeing the xenomorph that is not based on human DNA. I
Right.
think that's rad as
That
hell.
was exactly where my head went to on that.
And also the colony. Like you see a little bit more world building. You see this
Sure.
other place away from Earth where like this whole culture that's been established on this prison. I think that's awesome.
Oh yeah. You get the vibe that greater world outside of like what the little sector that we're seeing is kind of like very cyberpunk, especially if you imagine it with like the James Cameron design elements. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And I mean, I do miss the characters that they killed off, just kind of for convenience sake. I missed having Bishop there. Of course, I missed the other two. But as far as the world building that they did for it, the world building is what made it so great to me. Like, there's a very distinct visual look to the whole film. Like having everyone, shaved bald and on this place where there's no real technology, and it just seemed so, maybe not, yeah, real. It just seemed like we're seeing another corner of the universe that I wanted to see, and another aspect of the Xenomorph Express. I think that was rad. Now, anyway, I got off base here, but my love for that story aside, I'm not convinced that it is going to be considered canon forever. I think because so many people want to see the continued story of Hicks and Newt and Ripley.
Right.
I feel like at some point there could be a retcon, and I want this story to stick around for a long time. So this story relies very heavily on the first two films.
Okay.
And you're going to see, and as far as timeline, it's pretty close to those first two movies as well. I don't want to give too much away, but it ties into the second film, and kind of as far as the vibe, it feels a lot like both those first two movies. Like I mean, I love that first one, how it's kind of a, you're trapped in like a bottle episode, you're trapped in the ship with
it's a very claustrophobic,
this monstrous thing. And then in the second one, it completely changes and becomes its own thing, which is equally kick-ass, but very different. Where like you're in the nest,
Yeah.
So there are aspects of both of those that I really love and wanted to express. So it is a homage to both those films.
Doing some quick math here. So we're about 4 months away from this book coming out. So I'm going to ask some questions, and if you can't answer them, I understand. But I'm trying to get a bigger picture of what to look forward to with this book, right? So you said it does tie directly to the first two movies, so Alien and Aliens. Are we going to see some returning characters from the film?
What can I say?
I'd say you could just go like, xenomorphs, duh.
No, you do.
Okay. And I'm assuming, hopefully, we're going to see some like original characters that are kind of our entry point into the book.
Say it again now.
Like some original characters, like, so, as a fan of the series, like, obviously I know Ripley, I know Newt, I know Hicks, things like that. But like for I mean, when did Aliens come out? Like 1988?
The second one came out in 80. Oh my God. 4, 6.
We're old.
Man, shoot, I forget.
My producer should be checking on this.
I just made reference to this, but it's been a few weeks. I forget offhand.
But I mean, that being said, I mean, we're well over 30 years since Aliens, right?
Yeah.
So for like a younger generation that maybe hasn't seen the movies, big fan of Marvel Comics, they see, I mean, a Xenomorph, that Geiger design is so iconic, right? They see that cool cover for Alien #1. Are there going to be new characters and things like that for us to kind of follow along in your story? Or are we going to kind of?
Yes, primarily we're following a new character. There's a new protagonist.
Okay.
That I'm very proud of. That I think people are really going to dig him. But there's also, I want some connective tissue, to the originals, and so there is another character that you're going to see that you recognize and that I love very much.
So let's talk a little bit about the development of the book. So I knew you were doing Last God, that's ongoing, coming out every month and doing super good. My favorite thing about Last God is I always know a book is good when customers try to sell the book to me. Like if they're like, have you read such and such book? And I'm like, oh no, I haven't given it a shot. When they go and get it and they're trying to sell me comics in the shop, I'm like, okay, I should probably read this book. And for me, Last God was one of those titles. So you're working on Last God at DC. Obviously, you're in the military as well, doing the Captain America thing. How does like Marvel approach you and go like, hey, Alien, you ever heard of that? How does that all get off the ground?
I don't know if I actually reached out to them about it. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if I was already on the short list for it or not.
Okay.
But I saw the news hit with everyone else.
Right.
Like when they showed those kick-ass David Finch covers.
Right.
um, with like Predator holding Iron Man's
Oh,
like
that's so
head,
good.
presumably,
Yeah.
and the alien as well.
Yeah.
I like literally yelled. I was like, yes! I was so into it, and I literally like stopped whatever I was doing and emailed my Marvel Zombies Resurrection editor, and I was
Right.
like, give me this book, I'll crush it. Like I was like,
Yeah.
there's you don't know anyone who loves it like I do. Um, and he was like, I think I stole a Stephen Colbert phrase and was like, I've been training my whole life for a race I never knew was coming. And I was like, you don't even know like what I'm going to do for this book. And he was like, you know what? I think you're right. I think that's a great fit. And then I got a call for it. Now it wasn't Jordan White was my editor on Marvel Zombies Resurrection,
Right.
and who is awesome, by the way. I love Jordan. Um, he is not my editor on Alien, but I got a call from a different editor. I was like, hey man, we'd love to talk to you about Alien. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna crush this. So I yeah, so it worked out. I have no idea if that call had any, like I talked to another guy over there later that had apparently pitched for me as well in that book. And that sounded like it happened before I even called Jordan. Um, so I don't really know how it went down behind the scenes, but I don't even want to know. Like I just want to do this.
So let me ask you this. In the professional industry circles, like, is it just a known thing that you're the alien guy? Like you're the aliens guy?
I don't think they knew it before that. Before I mean, for anyone who's read Marvel Zombies Resurrection, I mean, there's a lot of that second movie in that story. Like
Right.
and I mean, my first story ever, if you can, if you can see this thing on my wall back there, that's a, you know what? Let me unplug here. I'm going to take you over there. Well, I can't, I got a microphone. Well, whatever. I'll just have to tell you about it. But it's from a web comic that I did called The Lost Boys of the U-Boat Bremen. And that is basically like Ridley Scott. Sorry, my computer's doing something stupid now. That is basically Ridley Scott's Alien meets Lord of the Flies on a U-boat. Like it is all about being trapped on the ship with this unknown thing, like this unknown evil that's hunting you down one by one. It's like a period horror piece. It was the whole thing's in black and white, which I wanted it to be. Yeah, let me show this to you. This is pretty.
Yeah,
badass.
let's do this.
So this is a page from that book. It's like a stone idol that they find. Whoops, they find on their ship in a crate, and it's like this pregnant woman's skull thing with these little babies. Like it's super creepy. The whole thing is just really just a study in creepiness. And
that's the most metal goth thing I'm gonna see all day.
Yeah, dude. I don't know if you've ever been inside like a submarine or a U-boat, but man, they are cramped.
No, absolutely. I actually had the opportunity. I was a Boy Scout, and we went up to Massachusetts and we got to stay on one of the battleships overnight. It was a cool thing they did for the Boy Scouts, and they also had a submarine, a decommissioned submarine that you could kind of tour, and it's tight. I wouldn't say I'm claustrophobic, but that situation, I was like, I don't know if I'm really comfortable being in a metal tube that goes underwater.
Yeah, dude. For like months, like it's an intense situation, just like being in it, let alone being like living on it. I can't even imagine.
No.
So yeah, I wanted to tell a story about. I know in World War II, they were towards the end. The Germans were they were drafting a lot of old men and teenagers to fill their U-boats and armies because they were running out of warm bodies. And I was just thinking about what it would have been like to be like literally a kid, like a teenager.
Yeah.
And being just thrown on these ships. By the end of the war, the U-boats were getting blown out of the water like constantly. Like there was the British had figured out how to kill those things.
Right.
And U-boats were just, if you're on a U-boat, you're just screwed.
At that point, we had to like crack their codes and things like that too, right? So we just kind of knew what was going on.
Yeah, like they found out how to use the mines and everything to really, they really had their number, So I just couldn't imagine being more scared than being this kid fighting in this losing war, stuck in a U-boat. Just 2 chances out of 3 you're going to get killed. Just about the most anxious situation I can imagine, and then put him in under the water, like trapped in the bottom of the ocean with this horrible thing. So to me, it seemed like a pretty sweet setup for a horror story.
Yeah, absolutely. You sold me. Is that still available?
Yeah, it's on my website. It's just my full name.com. And yeah, Lost Boys Debug Bremen. It ended up getting printed also in the full bleed anthologies that IDW put out. Every one of those had a chapter of Lost Boys in it. So yeah, it's in paper as well, but it's also on my website for free right now.
There you go, guys.
So anyway, that was all based on Ridley Scott's Alien, and just in the vibe of it,
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
instead of construction workers in space, it was Nazi kids in World War II.
Right. Right. No, I just hearing that pitch for that book. First of all, as soon as this interview's done, I'm going to read that. Second of all,
Thanks.
knowing that's where you're kind of approaching this story from, I was already excited to have like some really good Alien content. I'm over the moon. I think probably a lot of our readers, I can't wait to tell people about this. And obviously the people that are watching already know. Also, if you're watching at home and you were curious, the original Alien, the Ridley Scott classic, was 1979. The James Cameron, equally as awesome but a little bit different, sequel, Aliens, was 1986. So there was like a 7 years gap. Yep. So that's what, 33 years, 34 years? I'm really bad with math.
Yeah, 34 since that one.
Yeah. So this is, if I understand correctly, this is you're working on the Alien book, and trying basically laying the groundwork for, which hopefully is going to be an ongoing kind of series with Marvel. There's also a Predator book coming, and then an AVP book coming. Do you have any hand in like the AVP stuff, or is that being handled separately? Is that going to be a different kind of thing?
No, I don't know much about their plans for Predator.
Right.
As far as the AVP stuff, I can't really say anything, but it's
okay.
I don't know the timeline for that either, honestly.
Right.
And that's the truth. I don't know when
Fair.
exactly they're planning on doing that. I know at some point they want to start weaving things together, but it's all very pie in the sky at this point. And I'm just putting like all my creative eggs are in the Alien basket right now, Alien nest.
Please keep them there. We need more face huggers, and that honestly, I think there are a lot of, shockingly, property comics typically don't do great, right? Like a tie-in comic doesn't really typically do great. And I think I would argue recently, with some of the bigger properties like Star Wars and some of the stuff that Boom is doing, they've kind of cracked the secret. And I think everybody is really, no pressure, excited to see what you do with this Alien book, because this is like this fresh start with like awesome creators, and the power of Marvel kind of behind it. So I mean, I can't imagine people could be any more excited than they are already for this book. So,
well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, honestly, I agree. I feel like there was a time when that thing about licensed books is true, and now you've got Boom crushing it with Firefly. You've got Star Wars books coming out of Marvel that have been great. Yeah. Like the Darth Vader book was so good and is good. They've really figured it out. I mean, it's just so many talented people doing awesome things, and like such creative ideas, but still revering the canon, like right. It's, fitting in stories with characters, like, it doesn't specifically say that Darth Vader and Luke never met in between those other films.
Right.
And so you put that stuff in there that in a way that makes sense and doesn't disprove any movies, contradict anything that people love, but just adds so much. Like, we've got Obi-Wan Kenobi, show coming up with fucking Darth Vader in it.
Yeah, I know.
It looks totally dope. I really think they figured out how to do great stories that fans of the canon will love.
And I think that's kind of where, like I mentioned, and you had mentioned as well, is that, I think they figured out the code, right? How to do these like tie-ins and other media to these things that we love. And I think the secret is this, and correct me if I'm wrong, the guys who love this stuff, the guys who love like the Power Rangers or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Firefly, Star Wars, Warhammer 40K, get the guys that love that stuff, that write awesome comics. So guys like Kieran Gillen, Phillip Kennedy Johnson, and you're going to end up with this amazing project. I mean, I think that's the secret, and I think they finally figured it out. It's not a commercial anymore. It's like they take this stuff seriously.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, Valiant also really kind of put themselves on my map with just the names, man. The people who they've brought in to do their, to make their superhero line legit were like,
oh yeah,
insane. Like just some of the best people in comics. So it was, just a really great approach.
So we got Alien coming out in March. And then the news yesterday, it was funny. We have a meeting on Thursday mornings, and the first thing they said to me was like, "Well, it's not like you're gonna have anything to talk to Philip tonight about." And I was like, "Wait, what happened?" They were like, "Go look at the Hollywood Reporter," because it was announced in the Hollywood Reporter yesterday that you're gonna be taking over not only Superman but Action Comics as well. Like you are Mr. Superman as of this moment.
Oh, well, thanks.
So
I don't know what to say to that. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm over the moon excited. As much as I feel like it's going to come across as bullshitty, like me telling you what a huge Superman fan I am after just telling you what a huge Alien fan I am too. But it's the truth. Like,
yeah,
if I had to pick two properties to work on, man, like I mean, Alien. I'm such a just dyed in the wool Alien fan, but I grew up wanting to be Superman. You know,
right.
like just and Batman too. I'm not going to say it was only. You know, I love Batman just as much. They're just so. They scratch such different itches for me as a kid.
Oh, for sure.
And even now, like, I'm not going to tell you, I never worked out with Batman, you know, music on in the background. I guess
right.
You know, Batman is just that fantasy of like the guy, just the human mortal man who put himself on the same pedestal as gods and can stand toe to toe with anybody in the universe just
right.
through sheer force of will. And an endless fortune, but we'd like to think about just the
right. The sheer force of will part is the good part.
Yeah. So you just make yourself into this thing, you know, like you can do anything, and that is the Batman power fantasy, you know. And
right.
for Superman, it's this aspirational thing where you just like, for me, it's captured most perfectly in the opening credits of the 1978 movie. Where you try to imagine seeing it for the first time, and you know the credits are rolling like the Superman
that
crest
zoom,
just like zooms into the screen, and John Williams' music is blowing over you, and the credits are zooming overhead, and like this big 3D effect, and God, well, like with the trumpets sailing and those images, and you see the S shield, and you just like you just want to be that, like it just makes you want to be Superman, and you just want to fly,
right.
And that is a feeling I've been chasing my whole life. And that's like just that's what I want to do in my comics, like, especially now that I'm writing Superman himself.
Right. The man there. I mean, there are many like him, but I mean, it's Superman. I mean, no pressure. And really talking about no pressure. I mean, Brian Michael Bendis is, I don't want to shower him with too much praise. He's probably not watching, but he's a living legend in the industry, right? Like, I mean, he's done some really big things. And so you're kind of, that's a big act to follow. I mean,
it is. I mean, I didn't read comics for a long time. Like I grew up on comics. Sure. I literally learned to read on comics and loved them my entire childhood, all the way through high school. And when I went to college, a music major is real intense time wise. You're just like, you're practicing like constantly, like you just sell your soul to the practice room. And I didn't really read a comic for a while.
Right.
Or anything for fun to speak of. I was just studying all the time. And then I kind of started, like, I wanted to get back into it as an adult, and was kind of like, I don't know, sort of did my toe in now and again, but I didn't even know where to start anymore. Like last time I had read comics, I was reading like Mullet Superman and like Nightfall and
yeah, I'm with you.
Phalanx Saga from like Joe Mad X-Men, like stuff like just super 90s stuff. And now I didn't even know where to begin, you know. And then but then my younger brother is an artist. Like I wanted to be a cartoon, like not cartoonist, but like a comic artist when I was younger.
Right.
And ended up doing music instead. And then I got a brother who also played trumpet and was an artist, and he went the other way and wanted to be an artist. And so we started doing stuff together. Just like I would write stuff for him to draw. And then that was kind of my excuse to get back into comics. And when I found all the amazing stuff that people were doing, it just blew my mind. Like the state of the art was just so different.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the short list of creators that I really started to cling to was Bendis.
Yeah.
Like he was doing Powers, and he was doing New Avengers, and it's just such amazing work. And then I through that I discovered his Jinx World stuff and Torso that he had done before that, and just really loved his dialogue in particular. Like the way I love Elmore Leonard's dialogue in novels and like in prose. I feel like Bendis had really cracked that code in comics. Like some editors don't like all the back and forth dialogue where you have multiple balloons from each character in a single panel, but depending on the characters and there's the rhythm of the conversation, I feel like it makes conversations feel very real.
Right.
And it's a trick I like to use as well. I just really love how he captures, like especially when he's on a team book,
Oh yeah,
he captures people's um, characterizations, like their personality and even their motivations, so concisely with a couple of the words of dialogue. It's nuts. Like you can tell who's speaking. If you were just seeing the balloons on the page and no art, you can still tell who's talking. It's
absolutely. Oh yeah,
super well done. So I mean, yeah, I mean that in that regard, I'm following one of my heroes in the industry. I mean, I have very different plans for Superman in particular,
right.
but as a writer, man, he's like a super short list for me that
Yeah.
I respect a great deal, and he's been awesome to me personally. So no, I can't fault Bendis for anything.
Well, he's one of my shortlist guys too. So if you want to just like shoot him an email and just be like, hey, this guy Billy, big fan. He's kind of weird, but you should do a show. We would
I'll
love
do
it.
it. He's got a big ass Bill Paxton tattoo in his chest.
Yeah, see, I think that makes me metal enough that like maybe we could talk. Anyways, no. That being said, like you said, you have very different plans for Superman, which is I think for a lot of people are exciting. So going into the end of winter with DC, we're going to see the big Flashpoint event, and that's going to kind of take over the full line of books. But then we're going to get back to kind of, I don't want to say business as usual, but back to the meat of the DC universe, and we're going to see you in the driver's seat of Superman. I know you probably can't reveal a ton, but story-wise, where do we find the big blue Boy Scout?
Yeah, I can't reveal too much, but I will say that I'm not going to be on both books for forever.
Sure.
Like it's right now, I'm writing both books for a while.
Yep.
But it's building up to a big event.
Okay.
That's going to be in one of the two titles for a while.
Okay.
And it's incredibly epic. It is extremely ambitious, and it's a bigger swing than I ever thought I would get in comics. And I'm going to be, kind of funneling both titles into this one event, and then that's going to be the one title for me for a while. I'll say that Bendis did a really great job of humanizing Superman in a way that we haven't really seen before.
Agreed.
He's, as we've seen in his line, Superman gave up his alter ego, and now he's just like Clark Kent is Superman, and everyone knows that.
Right.
That's a big deal. The way he changed John was super important, and now John Kent has this really important, like the Kent family is kind of in the center of the universe.
Right.
Which is also a very big change in status quo. John is basically an adult now.
Yep.
Like we see him in Legion,
Right.
as as in kind of his coming of age story. But then we also see him coming back to Earth after that.
Right.
So we're seeing him as a young man now, who's potentially more powerful than his dad, and that's got to be explored. But fortunately, we have two Superman titles, so
Right,
that'll be enough to cover both characters and take us into the future. But the first half of 2021 is kind of getting us into that event that I have planned. That's going to be the status quo of Superman for a while, and it's as Bendis has taken this has spent his time humanizing Superman. I'm going to be exploring the other side of who Superman is, kind of his god status in the universe,
Okay.
and the epic quality that makes him. We see who he is as a person, and now we're going to show you who he is as a god, basically, as like a powerful figure who can do anything and conquer the universe, and yet he chooses to, do this with compassion and humility rather than just force.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of been explored, like when like Tom Taylor's like in the Injustice comic series that spun out of the game and stuff like that. And I mean, if you are interested in seeing that take on Superman exist, you can go read those comics. But I mean, it sounds tonally like the way you describe it, it is going to be kind of a shift from the way, what Bendis is doing. And I'll be honest, the way you describe it, this is sort of the Superman I like, because he is this, almost omnipotent figure in the DC universe, right? Like, I mean, he's, faster than a speeding bullet, and, he's nigh invincible and super smart and super fast, and just, freeze breath and laser eyes and like heat vision. Like he's just, he is the primordial superhero, right? And it sounds like you're going to explore like, yeah, he's essentially like, he's not a superhero, he's a god, right? Is that where we're kind of at in this?
We're going to see him. It's important for me that the world sees that it's not his powers that make him who he is. Like the powers are the the device through which we show how incorruptible he is.
Okay.
Like the fact that we've given this person ultimate power.
Right.
And everyone knows the old cliche that ultimate power corrupts. Well, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And he's the living exception, like the person who has absolute power and wields it with absolute humility and compassion. So I'm not going to say that we're not going to see him struggle, because we are.
Sure.
We're going to kind of put him through the mill. I mean, all the best stories are when we take these beloved characters and just put them through the mill. That was the case in Nightfall back in the day.
Absolutely.
It was the case in Frank Miller's Daredevil run. I mean,
Yep.
that's probably the biggest example where he just
ruined him,
the hell kicked out of him from beginning to end. And we've seen it with the X-Men. Like, we've seen all these great stories where we just tear them down to nothing and watch and see what they do. And we're going to do that. We're not going to see him just wade through all the bad guys and without a problem.
Right.
But we are going to see how capable he is, and we're going to see what he inspires in people all around the universe. We're going to see the most epic version of Superman that I can give.
So you brought up a great point, and I have full faith in you that this is. I've already texted my shop manager saying, like, hey, can I get Superman in action after on my sub? I need to read this. That being said, you made a really great point about some of the best comic stories in history are when we put the heroes through through the ringer, right? So you mentioned Miller's run on Daredevil, and what the X-Men put up with constantly. Why do you think people are drawn to those kind of stories? Because I mean, I think you're absolutely right.
I feel like there's no drama if we just see them, like, if they're not being tested.
Right.
I mean, there was actually this great moment in Dark Reign that I don't know if Bendis wrote the specific issue, but I think he did. It's a moment in, I believe, in an Avengers issue where Norman Osborn has put together his new Avengers team.
Right.
And it's like all these bad guys are anti-heroes, right? You've got Ares instead of Thor. You've got Iron Patriot instead of Cap and Iron Man.
Daken instead of Wolverine.
Yeah, all these, like Moonstone, and they're all kind of like the actual Avengers are kind of hiding out, watching it on TV, like, oh my God, that's Venom. What a douche, blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah.
Kind of talking through the whole thing. And Hawkeye, I think, is like, okay, so we're going to kill Norman then, right? I mean, we have to. And Spider-Man calls him out hardcore. And it's like, no, like not just no, but like an obvious eye roll, like, no, like,
right.
Are you serious? Like, I thought I knew who you were. Like, we're not doing this.
Right.
And he says, like, look, it's easy to be a superhero when the sun's shining and everything's easy. You got to be a superhero when we're being tested.
Right.
And right now we are being tested.
Right.
So this is the time where we have to actually earn our paycheck and not be a villain. It's important to see them show what they're made of, and seeing that struggle is what defines them,
Right.
Like, if you just see, if it was just a villain of the week thing where you're just like, the power fantasy thing eventually gets kind of, formulaic and uninteresting. It was just a monthly issue of the week. Here's a bad guy and we're going to knock him down.
Right.
And then next week we're going to knock him down again. In the original Superman stories, that's kind of how it was, where it was just a new setup and Superman just knocks him down one after the next.
They're very serialized. Right.
And it's, for what it was at the time, this is what it was, like, this fantasy thing. Like, what if you could do these amazing things? But now it's a different scene, and it's important to see them, I don't know. It's important to see them show what they're really made of.
So that actually kind of leads into my next question. We had talked about this with Alien, in terms of, you kind of reached out to Marvel and was like, I want this book, when we all got the news that, Alien was, coming from Fox to Disney. I guess you'd say Disney. And what's the story with, like, how did the Superman thing happen for you? Because this is, I mean, you're living like every, 12-year-old comic book fan boys, like, and girls, like, fantasy right now. You're about to write Superman, like that. How are you not? Do you, like, just wake up every morning and just scream, like, yes, I'm here? Like, what is that like? And then how does DC reach out to you?
It's a great responsibility, honestly.
Sure.
Like, I mean, I'm not freaking out though, because I'm very confident in the story that we're telling. I think people are going to love the crap out of it. There is a buildup that's
Sure.
happening, and I really hope people. We can't just snap a finger and be like, boom, now the event is happening, and now
Right.
we're in the middle of this incredible epic. There is this buildup happening over the course of about 6 months that I want people to feel the ramp up to the thing that's coming,
Right.
and I hope everyone, goes with me on that journey and like sees what's coming. But it is, I mean, I know how fortunate I am. I'm incredibly grateful for it. And I do not take it for granted at all. I'm doing it. I know it won't last forever. I'm trying to
Right.
make the most of it now, before I inevitably plateau and do other kinds of things. I'm
I
trying to, I'm trying to make the most of it and enjoy it. But I'm also spending a lot of energy making sure I don't face plant and I don't let anyone down. I mean, there's always going to be trolls
Oh yeah.
who look for stuff to complain about, and people who say they're fans and believe that they're fans, but really are they seem like they're just kind of looking for things to get pissed about.
Right.
And I understand that's just part of it, but they're not the majority. I mean, most people are really excited about seeing their heroes in different contexts, and everyone's been really great about it. As far as how it happened, I was okay when the 5G thing started to come together.
Yeah.
When Didio was around, I was approached about doing some different books for what they were kind of conceiving of as their like cosmic line.
Right.
Some things that they had some big plans, and they really liked the world building that I was doing for Last God. And for anyone who's watching who's not read Last God, the two things that define that book, it's a fantasy horror series. I mean, more fantasy than horror in the end, but
Yeah.
really dark fantasy, and is defined by the unbelievable artwork by Riccardo Federici.
Absolutely true.
Just ungodly good, and also by the insane level of world building that we're doing for it. We
Also
are
true.
and with that book, I've established myself as the guy who's willing to spend way too much time world building,
Right.
and to just make this deep dive world that you can just explore forever.
Right.
Like I love Tolkien, I love George R. R. Martin, I love Lewis, and all the big guys who made these worlds that you feel like you can just dive into and never hit bottom, and just see more and more and more about all these different worlds and religions and languages and races and fighting systems, and I mean anything. Like just everything feels so real and fleshed out. And I didn't want to do the small ball version of that.
Right.
So instead, when I was doing it, I just went deep on all the world building and just spending endless hours coming up with glossaries filled with languages and different religions, like some real, some false, and how
Right.
they would, like a history of how they would have clashed over the years, and the different, not just the different races, but different tribes of each race, and like where they live. Because we're not just all humans that speak
Right.
the common tongue. Like we're all, Earth is filled with a huge tapestry of different kinds of cultures.
Sure.
I wanted that in this world too. So we just went all the way. I mean, so much so that when DC realized how much world building there was going into this, they were like, do you want to put a bunch of extra pages in the back of every issue and show us something? Because I had literally like songs, like with sheet music that weren't going to make it into the book.
Right.
I had usually when you see music on a page, usually it comes along with a couple little eighth notes or something
Right,
to show
right.
this song. And to me, that wasn't enough. I came up with an actual like music notation for that world, like how music would look to them. So when you see music notes in the music captions, you're seeing notes of their notation,
Right.
not ours. It still looks similar enough to music that you know what you're looking at, but you can decode it. You can actually, like I've printed it in the back of those issues. You can actually decode it and figure out how to play it if you wanted to. Like it's all a real notational system that you could use.
Well, now I know what I'm doing with my weekend.
Yeah, totally. Do it. There's some of the books have issues, have like traditional notation, which
Sure.
in the book is called guild notation to make it, have an excuse for it. It's what the guild eldritch uses. And then Mindalum notation that just, musicians like singers would use.
It's funny. I was going to ask you for like a deep cut Last God fact, because again, we have a lot of Last God fans that make their way through Coliseum Comics, so much so that they turned me into one. And you just gifted us one. You were just like, here, here's a cool thing. You can spend your weekend decoding this music and listen to what music sounds like in this universe now. So that's pretty cool. That's awesome.
I mean, there's also like there's in issue 3, there's also, let's see, there's a couple cool things in the back of that issue. I think. Well, wait. Yeah, 3 is the one that has the hymn to Faith,
Right.
which is the oldest existing fragment of written language in that world.
Right.
It's like they're Gilgamesh or whatever. I don't think Gilgamesh is the oldest, but it's like their version of that. It's just a hymn to their false god, to the god of the Riverlands.
Right.
And it has it side by side with so ancient Qumeric to modern Qumeric, and in that world, modern Qumeric is English basically.
Yeah.
And you can compare those two. Like that's a real language that you can actually decode. And there's a little message in the very end, in the afterword of issue 12, that's in Qumeric that you can use to kind of figure out what I'm saying from the hymn to Faith fragment.
So DC, knowing all of, like that, you will literally build a world. Came to you and was like, "Hey, do you want to do our guy, like our mascot, like the mascot of basically comic books, and do some really deep dive stuff with him?"
Yeah, well, they came to me about doing all this cosmic stuff because of the world building stuff that I do, and I mean, they didn't say that, but I gather that was probably their attraction.
Sure.
And then 5G changed in nature, and we decided not to do what we were doing, and it kind of morphed into future state, and also some of those threads became stories that became stories that you're seeing now,
right.
Like the stuff with Joker War, and like a lot of those things kind of grew out of these. There was this crazy just fountain of creativity happening at DC
right.
for 5G, and some of those ideas were so baller that we still wanted to use a ton of them.
Sure.
Like we're still finding ways to use a lot of that stuff and just take these huge swings without breaking DC.
Right. Right.
So we're and it just kind of with the plans that we had in place for the cosmic line, it just made sense that I would apply those to Superman.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we're doing. John still has a very important place going forward, but Superman does too, and we're going to be exploring a lot of those ideas that we had in place. Just in it's changed a lot. I don't mean to say this has been repurposed just whole cloth into this, because that's not what happened. But there are these not generic, but these general like umbrella concepts that we had that we are re-exploring and finding new ways to use in the coming stories. And a big part of that was Superman.
Okay. So I have one more question for you, and then we do this new thing. It's the Coliseum Flash Round. I basically ask questions. Don't think about them. Just answer them as quickly as possible. Right. And then, as you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, your secret to success is struggling. I don't want to make you struggle anymore tonight, so we'll wrap up shortly after that. But something we had talked about kind of in our pre-interview was, we talked about how there are a lot of really famous comic book creators that were also veterans, sort of, like your situation. You had mentioned a factoid about Jerry Siegel. Did you want to share that could you share that with us again?
Yeah, sure. So Jerry Siegel, for those who don't know, was one of the co-creators of Superman. He was the writer. And so he and Joe Shuster created Superman. And then after that, during World War II, he was drafted. Jerry Siegel was drafted into the Army. And he was stationed at, I believe, Pearl Harbor. And given the timeline and when those issues were coming out and everything, it seems as though he was actually sending in scripts from Pearl Harbor while enlisted. And I believe, there were other veterans during that war who also ended up writing Superman, but I think he was the only one who actually wrote while he was in. And I believe I'm the next person after Jerry Siegel who's now active duty, who's writing Superman active duty.
That is that's a long line.
I don't know of anyone who wrote Captain America active duty either, but that could be my own ignorance showing. I don't think anyone else has written Cap while active duty, but I could be wrong about that. But that's a great honor. Yeah. And I, it's just a bit of trivia, but I am very proud of it and very proud of the connection between Superman and the U.S. military. And I can't wait to do right by him in the book.
All right, so this is the Coliseum Flash Round. I'm just going to ask you a question. Don't give it too much thought. Just give us the first thing that pops in your head. All right. So Favorite comics writer that is not Phillip Kennedy Johnson.
Yeah, that's not myself. Nice. Hey, comics writer. God, what do I do? Ramander, I guess. Brubaker. What do I do?
Good one.
Brubaker.
Hey, excellent one. Favorite trumpet player that is not Phillip Kennedy Johnson.
Okay. I don't like that I'm like automatically assumed to be the first choice. Nicholas Payton.
Okay. And then last question. Favorite fantasy writer that is not Phillip Kennedy Johnson.
I mean, I got to say Tolkien.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, absolutely a legend. Philip, you are absolutely incredible. There is so much to look forward to in comics in 2021, and you just raised the bar even higher. We've got Alien coming out in March. We've got Superman, and do both launch in March? Superman and Action, right?
They do.
And man, that is the month of Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Like, they're gonna have to rename. They give you a holiday sometime in that month, at least.
All right. Well, my son's birthday is around that time, so we'll take that one.
There you
he's
go.
He's going to be pretty excited. I mean, he's not going to be reading Alien for like a long time.
Sure.
But he's also a pretty colossal Superman fan. So that's going to be worth, and any amount of work to see him just kind of light up and see the book.
Well, now I have to ask this because as a dad as well. How old is your son? I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
He's 6.
Okay. I can't even imagine, like, I mean, does he know what you do for a living? Like, I mean, does he?
He does. He's way into it. I mean, he and I workshop stuff all the time. Lately we've been running together a lot.
Okay.
And I mean, he runs literally miles with me.
Oh, wow.
And he's crushing it. I mean, we're not going super, he's got these short little legs, so he's not going crazy fast, but he's running nonstop for like long. And when the key to that is we play these games, like we'll take turns running. Like one day we'll run distance, another day we'll do sprints.
Right.
And even when we do sprints, we're still like covering the same like area.
Right.
And we'll just make up these stories that incorporate running. Like, what are we running towards or from? And like, what are we sprinting towards? What do we do when we get there? Like, we're making up all these very comic booky stories.
Yeah.
Like it's getting cold out, so he's wearing his mask, and like his masks are, he's got a Spider-Man and a Captain America and a Batman one. Okay. And they go over, they look like cowls, like, or helmets that go over like his face.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so he'll pretend to be whoever, and we'll make up these comic book, scenarios, and it's really fun. And so we'll kind of workshop stuff like that, and then other times we'll read. DC's putting out all these really awesome kids books.
Oh, absolutely.
We've been reading a lot of those.
The ink stuff has been awesome. I know it's a little bit more young adult than kids, but the ink stuff that this year was really, really good. So
yeah, so we read a lot of those, and like the 5-minute Marvel stories too, and various things. And we and then we'll play Legos and also make up all these kind of little stories, adventures. He's making up his own adventures all the time now, and he knows what I do. And when we go into the store, he'll look for my stuff. And he's been to a few signings with me not lately, but we before everything went down, we did a signing for Marvel Zombies, I think.
Okay.
And so Marvel Zombies, and I guess Last God 2 probably up in Midtown Comics.
Right.
And he was there with me, and he was, he'd see a poster on the wall of my stuff, and he'd kind of tug on the sleeve of some rando and be like, my dad did that. And then,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then like he used to go, he would pick up a comic that he thought looked cool. Yeah. And be like, he'd show it to me. He's like, did you make this? And I'd be like, no. I'd be like, and he just like put it back.
Meanwhile, it's like a really awesome like Matt Fraction book or something. Like,
yeah. He's like, hey dad, you make this? Lame. So he's super supportive and way into it. So it's been the best.
That is absolutely awesome to hear. It's always great to hear about like another generation that's going to like kind of pick up the comics thing behind us. Philip, thank you so much for your time. You've been absolutely incredible. I cannot wait for March because I can't wait to get my hands on all these super cool books. But again, you are the coolest. Thank you for agreeing to do Coliseum Forum.
Oh man, Billy, thanks so much, dude. It's been a pleasure.